Today, we've got two cases that are making headlines. First, I'll unpack the story of a former college football star who's been charged with homicide for causing an ATV crash that resulted in the death of his girlfriend. Then I'll examine the bizarre case of a woman who tried to get back at her estranged husband by poisoning him more than once. Let's get into it.
Detectives say they've arrested 43-year-old Cheryl Gates today. She's on your screen here. They didn't give too many details, but they did say she's charged with attempted murder, contaminating food or drink, stalking, and damage to property.
Investigators say back on July 8th, Gates contaminated her husband's Celsius energy drink with prescription medications with the intention of causing a blackout condition or incapacitation.
Hi, I'm Katie Rang, and this is Crime House Daily, your weekday true crime companion. We follow the cases making headlines now, where justice is still unfolding. This is a First Watch episode bringing you today's biggest crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Crime House Daily so you never miss an episode. This episode discusses active criminal cases and breaking news. The information we share is based on what's publicly available at the time of recording and may change as new evidence comes to light. We aim to inform, not to decide guilt or innocence. So everyone mentioned is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Before we get into today's main cases, I want to give you guys an update on a case I covered on social media. Philadelphia police are revealing more about the investigation into the death of 23-year-old Kada Scott, who went missing on October 4th after leaving her job at a nursing home. Her coworkers said she seemed upset after a phone call, walked outside, and got into a dark-colored car. A missing person search ensued for her, but it ended in tragedy when 2 weeks later, on October 18th, her remains were discovered in a wooded area behind an abandoned school. The medical examiner confirmed she'd been shot in the head and ruled her death a homicide. In the days leading up to her disappearance, investigators say Kada had been texting 21-year-old Keon King. We're getting new details about the case, and authorities say that the two had just started communicating when Kada sent him a message saying, "Kidnap me again." King allegedly replied, "Better be up too." Police later traced King's cell phone data to the same area where her body was found and tied him to a burned-out vehicle that investigators believe was used to move her remains. At first, King wasn't formally charged. He was only a person of interest in Kada's disappearance, and he was being held on unrelated arson and tampering counts while detectives gathered evidence. But after the recovery of Kada's body and new forensic findings, prosecutors upgraded the case and charged King with murder, robbery, abuse of a corpse, and conspiracy. Officials say his phone activity lines up with the time frame of Kada's disappearance and the burned car. Prosecutors have also revealed that King has a prior history of alleged violence, including a kidnapping and strangulation case from earlier this year that was dropped when the victim didn't appear in court. Those charges are now being refiled, and new alleged victims have since come forward. King remains in custody without bail, and prosecutors say that the investigation is ongoing as they prepare for the next phase of the case. We have a First Watch episode coming up where we explore this case in depth, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. And follow us on social at CrimeHouse 24/7 as breaking updates roll in. For our first case today, we're looking at Julian Fleming, a 24-year-old former college football player who was recently arrested in connection with the death of his girlfriend, 23-year-old Alyssa Boyd. Alyssa died earlier this year while riding on an ATV Julian was driving. Julian was allegedly intoxicated at the time of the crash. Now he's facing several charges, including homicide by vehicle and driving under the influence. So how did we get here? Alyssa Boyd is born on February 3rd, 2002 in Bloomsburg. It's a small town in Pennsylvania with a population of only 13,000 people. She grows up in a loving family with her parents, David and Lori, and her brother, Zachary. Her parents sign her up for various sports, and they quickly realize she is a great athlete. In high school, she was a 3-sport athlete, and her main sport is soccer. But she is also a track star and plays basketball as well. But what makes Alyssa really special is how much she is loved by her family, friends, and teammates. They all say she is a social butterfly who has a passion for life and an energy that lifts the spirits of everyone around her. But Alyssa isn't the only person at her school racking up athletic achievements. Julian Fleming is a star wide receiver, and he is setting state records for receiving yards and touchdowns. Alyssa and Julian have a lot in common and have always been good friends. However, after high school, they headed down different paths. As the best-ranked wide receiver in the nation, Julian sets his sights on Ohio State. Meanwhile, Alyssa makes her way to the University of Alabama to study psychology. There, she joins the Gamma Phi Beta sorority and is having a blast making tons of new friends. Unfortunately for Julian, his college career gets off to a slow start due to an injury, and he ends up redshirting his freshman year. He doesn't get much playing time his sophomore year either, but Julian is a breakout star his junior year. But unfortunately, the success from the prior year doesn't carry over to his senior year. However, since he redshirted his freshman year, he does have another year of eligibility, and he decides to transfer to a new school to finish out. He wants to be closer to home, so he transfers to Penn State. While Alyssa is back visiting her parents, she runs into Julian and sparks fly, and the two begin dating. They decide to date long distance when she goes back to Alabama. And although long-distance relationships can be tricky, especially in college, they are making it work. Over the next year, as a romance blossoms, they visit each other regularly, and Alyssa cheers Julian on in all of his games. During his last year at Penn State, his star power reappears, and the team makes it all the way to the semifinals of the college football playoffs, and he now has his sights set on the NFL. Ultimately, he's not drafted, but the Green Bay Packers sign him as a free agent. By now, Julian's used to the roller coaster of the sports world, but he is just stoked to be playing in the NFL. Alyssa is by his side through it all, while she's still working towards her degree in Alabama. However, as soon as Julian's NFL dream is about to begin, it's over. Julian's earlier hip and back injuries come back to bite him, and he fails his physical exam. The Packers rescind their offer in early May 2025, and Julian is absolutely crushed. With his future hanging in the balance, he wants to clear his head and blow off a little steam. And as always, Alyssa is there for him no matter what. So a couple weeks after he's let go by the Packers, they head out for a small vacation to the town of Troy on May 23, 2025. Located in a quiet, forested part of northern Pennsylvania, Troy seems like a relaxing weekend getaway. There, they can ride ATVs and enjoy themselves while leaving their worries behind for a while. And around 8 p.m. that night, that's exactly what they do. Julian gets behind the wheel of one of the ATVs, and Alyssa climbs onto the back. They pull onto the street, and as the wind whips their faces, Julian starts to pick up speed. He revs the engine, pushing 40 miles an hour. And although it's technically under the speed limit, it is a dangerous speed for an ATV, especially since neither of them are wearing helmets. Not to mention, Julian's allegedly been drinking a lot. And when a deer jumps into the road, there's no time for him to stop. The ATV slams into the deer, sending Julian and Alyssa flying. Moments later, someone driving their car down the road spots the accident. The driver slams on their brakes, then darts out of the car to check on them. Slowly, Julian begins to regain consciousness, and once he's fully awake, he realizes the seriousness of the situation. He rushes over to Alyssa and tries to wake her up, but she doesn't. Alyssa is completely unresponsive. The driver who found them calls their mother and asks her to hurry to the scene to administer first aid. Meanwhile, first responders are already on their way because a neighbor heard the crash and called 911. Before the medics got there, the driver's mother arrives and begins performing CPR, but Alyssa still isn't responding. Even though Julian's in serious pain, he crouches next to Alyssa, trying to find her pulse, but he can't. Now he's becoming even more panicked. He tells the driver about the deer that ran into the road, and he admits he'd been drinking. He says he had about 5 or 6. Medics finally arrive, but unfortunately, there's nothing they can do. Alyssa is pronounced dead at the scene. Later, it's determined that multiple traumatic injuries contributed to her death. Meanwhile, Julian is taken to the hospital with a serious head injury. While he's there, police obtain a warrant for a blood sample. When the results come back, they reveal that Julian has a blood alcohol level of 0.118%, which puts him well over the legal limit of 0.08%. A few days later, Julian is released from the hospital without an arrest. But that doesn't mean he's in the clear, and things are only about to get worse. I've seen so many people on social media talking about how clothes are getting more and more expensive, but the quality of the fabrics keeps getting worse and worse. It feels like even designer labels are using polyester, but charging the prices of real quality fabrics like cashmere, wool, and real silk. I've been searching for some staple pieces for fall and winter that are made of high-quality real fabrics that will actually last. And if you're in the same boat, you need to check out Quince. One of my favorite parts about Quince is that they are working directly with ethical, top-tier factories so you get high-quality clothes, ethically sourced, for half the price. I'm also on the quest for the world's comfiest bed, so I ordered their linen duvet and the mulberry silk pillowcases. For anyone who has asked about the hair, 100% silk, not polyester satin, is key to protecting it, so I'll make sure to report back on those. Step into the holiday season with layers made to feel good, look polished, and last. From Quince. Perfect for gifting or keeping for yourself. Go to quince.com/CHD for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/CHD to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/CHD. In May 2025, Alyssa Boyd's family and friends are heartbroken by her tragic death. Alyssa was such a beautiful soul whose life was only just beginning. Her family sets up a GoFundMe for her memorial services, and any money above the $10,000 they need will go towards a scholarship in her name. Ultimately, the family raises over $85,000. Since Alyssa was just months away from earning her degree, the scholarship fund feels like the perfect way to honor her memory. On June 2nd, 2025, a little over a week after Alyssa's death, Julian posts a tribute to her on Instagram, saying, quote, "Not a day will go by without you on my mind. Love you forever." But Julian's problems aren't going away. At the time of the accident, he claimed he'd only had about 5 or 6 drinks before operating the ATV. But based on his BAC, investigators say he had closer to 7 or 8. Since his BAC was well above the legal limit, Julian could be facing criminal charges. Soon, police bring him in to talk about what happened, but at his lawyer's advice, Julian exercises his Fifth Amendment right and doesn't answer any of their questions. This is only a short-term solution, though, because the authorities are still looking into him. And on October 8th, he's hit with multiple charges, including homicide by motor vehicle, aggravated assault by vehicle, and driving under the influence. That day, he willingly turns himself into the authorities in Pennsylvania and is held in jail for 1 day before he's released on a $75,000 bond. Then his attorney begins fighting to prove his innocence. He says Julian's charges are extreme, and that regardless of whether alcohol was involved, his lawyer says the situation was unavoidable because Julian was operating the ATV in a lawful manner, and he couldn't have stopped the deer from running into the road. He adds that Julian is traumatized from losing the love of his life. Despite everything he's lost, Julian is trying to move forward. And even with these charges hanging over him, he's still trying to sign with another NFL team. If you're planning on taking any ATV out, please be so incredibly careful. They seem like fun toys, and to a certain extent they are, but unfortunately, so many people die in ATV accidents. And this goes without saying, but please do not drink and drive. He is going to have to live with this guilt for the rest of his life. My heart goes out to all of her family and loved ones, and we can only hope that her loved ones can find the peace they deserve after Alyssa's tragic passing. As of this recording, there's no public information on whether a court date has been set. And as always, we'll keep you posted on any updates as this case progresses. Our second case today is about a 42-year-old woman named Cheryl Gates, who has been arrested for stalking and poisoning her husband, whose name remains anonymous. So what led Cheryl down this path of destruction? Let's start at the very beginning. Leading up to the crime, Cheryl Gates had a normal, unassuming life. She lives in North Carolina, works as a school therapist, and is married with 2 kids of her own. Cheryl loves spending time with her family and is always planning fun events and activities for them to do together. But behind closed doors, things aren't as happy as they seem. And in 2025, Cheryl and her husband separated. Cheryl's husband moves out and she is distraught over their split. At work, she's seen the impact divorce can have on kids, and it's the last thing she wants for her own children. And the more her situation weighs on her, the more she realizes she needs to try and fix things. Cheryl reaches out to her husband to try and reconcile, but he's not having it. But that doesn't deter Cheryl. She begins calling her husband relentlessly and showing up at his house unannounced. At first, Cheryl's husband lets this go. She is the mother of their kids after all, and he hopes the dramatics will eventually blow over. But things only start escalating. She's harassing him and even breaks his window. Eventually, he can't put up with her antics anymore, especially because it's gotten to a place where he's not just annoyed, he's feeling unsafe. Cheryl's husband threatens to take legal action if she doesn't stop harassing him, but that's not enough to dissuade her. In fact, her actions only get even more drastic. Cheryl doesn't tell anyone about the plan she's forming, but she needs to do a little more research to figure out the best way to go about it. So on July 8th, 2025, she opens up her laptop and turns to ChatGPT. Even though it might seem like ChatGPT might be able to tell you just about anything, that's not the case. Its parent company, OpenAI, has security measures in place so people can't use it to discuss violent content. These measures usually involve blocking potentially harmful prompts and responses. However, there are many cases of people using ChatGPT to commit crimes or even harming themselves. OpenAI says they're always working to improve how the bot interacts with people. But when Cheryl begins typing, she quickly finds a way to bypass the security measures they have in place. And in her attempt at payback, Cheryl goes full Walter White and creates a makeshift lab in her home so she can test different poisons and drug combinations to kill her husband. Authorities haven't released Cheryl's exact search queries, though. Did she just want to scare him or hurt him? Was she trying to kill him? Those are all things we should find out as this case moves forward and the authorities present more evidence. However, it doesn't seem like Cheryl shied away from the ideas on how to enact some serious harm. Over the course of nearly 3 months, she asks about the effects of oleander, ricin, and foxglove poisoning. For those who don't know, oleander is a poisonous shrub. Ricin is a poisonous substance found in castor beans, and foxglove is a poisonous flower. She even researches which prescription drugs could be, quote, ingested and injected. Out of everything Cheryl learns, she never seems to realize that internet activity can always be uncovered. Because in her attempt to get back at her husband, she destroyed her entire life. In July 2025, 42-year-old Cheryl Gates is looking for ways to punish her estranged husband, and Cheryl takes drastic measures. After months of using ChatGPT to research everyday poisons, Cheryl begins purchasing everything she needs. Rather than finding the poisonous plant she started out researching, Cheryl goes in another direction. She buys prescription drugs and other illicit substances. As of this recording, there are no public records revealing where she got everything, but she managed to get her hands on some extremely dangerous supplies. From there, she buys various pieces of lab equipment to mix everything, including syringes, a capsule filling kit, medical droppers, and drug scales, and stores everything in her home office. From there, she tries to figure out how she'll actually administer the drugs to her husband. Since he won't go anywhere near her, she has to be stealthy. So one day, Cheryl goes to her husband's house and secretly installs a tracking device on his car. This way, she can keep tabs on him and figure out the best way to strike. Since Cheryl's still under investigation, the details of what she does next also haven't been revealed to the public. But we do know that she does two things. First, she closely studies his daily routine. And second, by doing this, she learns that every morning he drinks a Celsius energy drink. Cheryl eventually feels confident enough in her ability to spike his morning drink without him noticing. And on July 12th, 2025, she carries out her plan. Fortunately, Cheryl's husband notices right away that his drink tastes funny, so he only takes one sip before pouring out the rest. But that doesn't stop her. She thinks she just needs a more deadly combo, so she goes back to the lab to mix something up. And when she tries again on August 18th, her husband is left completely incapacitated. Luckily, he survives, but he is immediately suspicious of his estranged wife. At this point, Cheryl's feeling increasingly confident and keeps talking to ChatGPT, and is now looking into fatal poisons. She keeps practicing mixtures in her makeshift home lab, and when the new school year starts up in August, Cheryl returns to work as though nothing's wrong. Little does she know, everything's about to come crashing down. Because the more suspicious her husband is becoming, the more he looks for evidence that she's up to something. And when he peeks underneath his car, he finds the tracking device she left there. Cheryl's husband immediately contacts the police and shows them the device. Based on the information that's been released, it seems like he also saved some of the last drink that left him incapacitated, and they sent it to the lab for testing. Knowing that Cheryl works with children, police take this evidence and waste no time obtaining a warrant for her arrest. On October 7th, 2025, she's arrested and charged with stalking and property damage, which they're hoping they can hold her on while they investigate the more serious allegations. However, Cheryl makes bail and is released the next day. Working faster than ever, police quickly obtain a search warrant on her home. And the next thing you know, they're standing in the middle of her amateur lab. They search her internet history and see the full history of her interactions with ChatGPT. Just 3 days after her first arrest, Cheryl is arrested again. But this time, she's charged with attempted murder and contaminating food and drink to render one mentally incapacitated or physically helpless. Soon, she's suspended from work without pay, and any mention of her is scrubbed from the school's website. As of this recording, Cheryl is being held without bond. I find the way people like Cheryl reason mind-boggling, because she says she wants to solve things with her husband because she doesn't want her kids to deal with the fallout of divorce. But she thinks trying to murder her husband and the father of her children won't mess them up more than anything. Crazy town. We'll be covering the case as it unfolds, and as always, we'll bring you all of the major updates as they come in. What did you think of today's cases? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. See you next time. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Crime House Daily and follow us on social media at Crime House 24/7 for real-time updates, because the pursuit of justice never stops.